Hey, what's up, friends? Welcome into the show. It's Jake Burns, Andrew Spade,
Hi, Jake.
and Andrew. What's up, dude? How are you?
I'm great.
Did you get any eclipse action down there today?
No, zero eclipse action. Very cloudy. Could not. The sun peeked out briefly at the around the time that it was the most obscured that it was here, which was I think 90% So, but not like what the good folks in Ohio experienced. No doubt. A very
Yeah,
different experience. So,
you
regretting not making my way up there.
you said yesterday on our podcast get together that it was because I was kind of underestimating it, calling it. I mean, it sounds cool. Don't know how cool it really is. And the moment at which everything goes pretty dark, that was really cool. It's like you're wearing sunglasses without wearing them. Then it got so dark because here where we are, I think we were at like 99.5%. There was the smallest sliver of the sun still out, but it was pretty dark. And it was street lights were on, neighbors like timing lights were on, or the sunlight detection ones were on. It was really a surreal thing. And I'm actually pretty happy we stuck around our house because it did get a little crazy out around Columbus. So it was still good enough though. I mean, up there where my parents are, and Mary and I said this yesterday, they got a full, like, the total experience, and they took some cool pictures. We took some cool pictures, but listen, what's it's a couple years. So we'll be back, Andrew. We can go do this thing again, some other location, not
Yep.
Ohio.
Just got to survive for 20 years, Jake.
You will make it. Good
Right.
eating,
Yep.
exercise, positive attitudes.
That's me.
And we'll check in on the next podcast where we're still talking about the Browns in 20 years. Push the fast forward button, a couple Super Bowls under our belt. And
I was just about to say, which one happens first? Another eclipse or a Brown Super Bowl?
Yeah, Kevin Stefanski maybe is on his retirement tour at that point, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
That's where we're at. So look forward to seeing everybody there.
The broadcast team for the Browns. We're in the booth.
We're in the booth
interviewing Stefanski, and the sun goes black.
And we're like, what a career we had.
Yep.
It's over. Call it a day. All right. So hopefully you guys out there enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Andrew didn't. A little regret, but we'll be around in a couple years. So listen, we're going to do a trade up edition of Dueling Mock Drafts, which is not, we try to do everything. We've done some sort of trade down stuff. We have done, actually, I don't know that we've gone all in on that. Maybe that'll be next week's episode. We trade down. This trade up is pretty rare, right? They don't do this very often. They did a little bit of a trade up for JOK 21 draft when they had more ammunition, but I don't think this is going to happen, Andrew, but I think the fun part of this is exploring sort of what it would take to do it, right? So you're trying to figure out how do the Browns, so say, like, for example, on my screen, and make sure you share yours, Andrew, so that I can see your simulator if you can. Like, I am looking at a situation, if I can zoom in a little bit so everybody can see, where the thing I don't love from Pro Football Focus is they don't give you the draft, like who's still available. I need to talk to somebody over there about fixing this.
It would be great to be able to see who you're trading up for.
it does make the purpose a little difficult, but you can go through plenty of ideas of who would be available.
Right.
The on the side that I'm drafting on, guys that I thought might slip into the second round, like I thought Adonai Mitchell might slip there. I thought there was a chance that we could see a cornerback like Kool-Aid McKinstry slip there, but we're not necessarily seeing, like, so I jacked with the filters a little bit. I put the randomness up just a touch, and then moved it to the PFF board a little further so that it could be a little less public, a little more how their grades work out. But most of the big names are gone at this point. So I think we need to settle, Andrew, what we think the highest point of a trade up would be. I think that's the thing to analyze here. I think that you're probably talking 45. That's a whole 10 spots. I'm open to what you think is best here, and we can settle on a spot.
I think you would agree that they're not going to part with either their first or second next year.
Correct. I would agree with that.
So I think the whole key here is that you have to get up as high as you can without giving up one or two next year. And so the best I can do from looking at this is like if I look at Tampa Bay at 26,
Mm-hmm.
if I give them 54, 85, and a third next year, I have a 78% chance of that getting accepted. But
Okay.
I think that's probably still a little too rich going up to 26.
Right. So if we look at like point systems, which these draft pick value charts are
Right.
popular these days with how they use them. Usually, I think the thing that we have understood is that most teams are using the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, as
They
I
still
think,
are, yes.
yeah, is what people have come to tell us. So if you're looking to move up to the top of the second round, let's just entertain the top of the second round.
Right.
That's 580 points for pick 33. If you're giving up pick 54, that's 360. If you're saying we don't want to move off pick 185 or pick 85 and we want to do 156,
Right.
that's only 30.
Right.
So you're telling me that a 3 next year, it doesn't have future numbers, but a third round or the top of the third round is 265. You're thinking the Browns are probably in the lower portion of that. It's a reach to think you could get to 33 with what I have up there. And they're kind of saying the same thing. They're saying that's 58% chance of that deal being accepted. I personally don't think that that's a trade that the team would accept. This doesn't seem like enough to me.
So just for a comparison, by the Fitzgerald Spielberger chart, which is the more modern analytical draft chart, to get to 33 from 54, you only need to add 206. But I think you and I both agree no team sitting at 33 is going to take 206 to come up 20 spots. It's just not going to happen.
That's why I think if we're going to use an idea here.
Oh, I agree.
The Browns go from like trading 54, 156 and a 3 next year. It's probably something in the like early 40s. So I'm going to run this draft on my side out until pick 40 and then see about making a trade there. All right, here we go. All right, so pick 40 happened. We're up with Green Bay. So this is who has gone in the second round. Troy Franklin, the wide receiver, Oregon. Ennis Rakestraw from Missouri, the corner. Jonah Ellis, edge out of Utah. Darius Robinson, the edge out of Missouri. Javon Bullard, the safety out of Georgia. Kamari Lassiter, corner out of Georgia. Ricky Pearsall goes pick 39 to Carolina. So Carolina's doubling up there because of the trade with Brian Burns. They have that extra pick. And then Chris Braswell goes, here we go, right, pick 40. So now we'd be at 41. The Packers also have pick 58. This is the Aaron Rodgers spot.
Right.
So it does feel like a spot where the Packers would be maybe willing to make a deal. But you got to come with something compelling. So if you're going 54 for 41, I do think it would take 156 and then a 3 next year. This is basically going to be accepted. How do you feel about that trade from Green Bay's perspective?
I think it's probably an overpay, like from the Browns' perspective.
Okay. So moving up 13 spots, you're
like,
moving off 2 additional picks. So you'd say maybe try around 4 next year?
Or a pick swap, maybe. A 3 for a 4.
Let me see here. What do they have? So you could say, all right,
maybe 156 for 169.
That's what we could try. That is not even remotely. It looks like Pro Football Focus Simulator uses a lot. They put a lot of emphasis on the future selections. So, you can put 156 and then you're trying to like attach some of these others in the 200s. It doesn't even entertain that swap deal. So I think you're probably going to have to do 156 around 4. And then maybe, at this point you could throw a 202 in there. Probably can't. 245, 255. You're probably they're not making that trade. So yeah, I mean, you're probably going to have to offer, are you offering around 4? They'll send back a 5, 6. Yeah. So they're not moving off anything. So if we're going to make this sort of deal, it would have to be, I think that the Browns would get something back, Andrew, maybe like a 240 for a 219, something like that. It's a 50-50 split. We can force trades. Do you feel like 41 and 219 54, 156 in round 4 seems feasible next
Yeah,
year.
I do. To get up to 41, I do think that's fair.
Okay, so we will, if I can click, I don't know why it's not letting me. I'm not clicking on player, so maybe it's because there we go. All right, so we're going to make that trade happen, and I've moved up to pick 41. On your side, I'll let you move wherever you want, maybe pick a different spot, maybe closer to you, or getting crazy at the end of the first round, or even earlier if you'd like to paint this picture.
Yeah. Yeah, I was poking around to see if I could get into the first round, because in the mock that I was doing, Brian Thomas fell to pick 30, and the Ravens took him, which is a nightmare scenario, obviously, right? So I was trying to get up to like Tampa Bay, Arizona at the end of the first round, but it's just too much. It's too much you basically couldn't do it without giving up the second or the first next year, and I don't think they would do that. So I think I have a deal that the Panthers might take here for 33 to get up to the top of the second round.
Okay. So you're at the top of the second round. I am moving up to pick 41. Perhaps I didn't need to go this far because Pro Football Focus is a little dicey, but I don't think Keon Coleman is going to be there much longer.
Not at 54, yeah.
So I'm going to select, there's a lot of options here. Roman Wilson. I mean, we like Jordan Morgan. Certainly could settle on Jordan. I know some people think this guy's short arms lead him inside and he's going to be a offensive guard. I'm not huge on the thought that he's going to be an offensive guard. I think he's too talented, too athletic to put inside. I think you need to keep him as a tackle and let him work through it. But if I'm moving up, it's for somebody I think is going to be a long-term part of the wide receiver room and is a different type of receiver than the Browns have. So different, looking at what it would take to get Keon Coleman. I don't think he's going to be there. I know Pro Football Focus is a little lower on him than some other boards, but I'm drafting him if I'm moving up in this spot. I have no problem doing it. So I'll take him at 41 and then run it out now to my next pick at 85 because we're only trading up here in the early portion to show you guys what that looks like. So let's switch over to your board, Andrew, and see what you got.
Yeah, so I was not able to get anything done with the Panthers, but I did get a deal done with the Patriots. So I gave up a third and 156 plus 54, obviously, to move up 20 spots to 34. And I also got 193, which I'm guessing is an early sixth rounder, I would guess. So, obviously move back from 156 to 193, and then you give up the third next year. I think the Browns would do that trade. I don't think the Patriots would.
Right. Yeah.
But it's also not outlandish considering where the Patriots are in terms of their needs. So I don't think it's so unrealistic that we should at least entertain the scenario, because I think the Browns giving up a third next year, a pick that if they have the season they're hoping to have would be in the 90s anyway, right? The 80s or 90s anyway.
Right.
Yeah, probably the 90s. So is that really that big of a loss? And you drop down from 156 to 193, but in this draft, I don't think that matters that much.
No, I don't either. I like it. Let's see who's
so the Panthers, hopefully they take Peyton Wilson. So this is what my board looks like.
Pretty similar in a lot of ways.
It is.
Just the nature of like Pro Football Focus's board. Obviously, names that had gone before, like Jonah Ellis. The tackles are there. Jordan Morgan was up there. Yeah, there's a lot of appealing names sitting there for you.
Yeah,
to select from. Obviously, go ahead and make your pick. But there's if they move up there against this board, all the way from McConkey all the way down to like Colson are good players.
Yeah. No, I mean the reason they would be moving up here would be if a player falls, right? And so, obviously they almost had that dream scenario where Brian Thomas fell into their laps and they could have made that happen. But in the real world, if that happens, you got to imagine there's going to be about a half dozen teams trying to get up to select him anyway. So I don't know, there's going to be a little bit of a bidding war. You mentioned Jordan Morgan earlier. That's the tackle that we both love and think, could be a starter in the league for a long time. Yeah, McConkey, Tyler Nubin is a very exciting player. We talked on yesterday's show about their need at safety and how it probably would not be the first player they'd select, and certainly not if they traded up. Kingsley Suamataia is a player that I think could be available at 54, but you could also see them probably more in line with the trade up that you made, Jake, right, where they come up into the mid 40s to make sure they get a tackle they think is a long-term starter. Pearsall, Burton, just a host of wide receivers. You picked Keon Coleman, so that's kind of the player that I think we both have our eyes on as a wide receiver that could drop into their range. But for the sake of the mock, I'm not going to take him. I think the move is Ladd McConkey here, because that's a player that in a lot of mocks is going late first round. I think he has a skill set that the Browns maybe don't have at the moment. I mean, I guess they do to a certain extent with Amari Cooper, but I think he would help diversify their wide receiver room. So I think that's probably the pick here. You assume in this sort of a scenario, they're moving up to kind of jump on a guy that they didn't think was going to fall out of the first round. So I think we'll take McConkey.
I'm interested in Ladd because I think there are people that sort of brush aside some of his issues, and to me, you look at him and I'm like, are people going to treat him a little bit like Marvin Mims? Not that they're the same player. I'm not saying that, but is that there's every year there's a wide receiver or two that the public is higher on than NFL teams, and I wonder if McConkey is that guy. I'm just going to be curious if that ends up shaking out that way. Even though there's a lot to like about him, I just am curious if he's going to be the flavor that a lot of these teams are looking for. Okay, I'm up at 85. Now, if we wanted to get really fun, we could entertain trading back here.
Right.
And recuperating some of the things that you've lost. Now, interdivision trades, not a big fan, but if the Steelers want to come calling for 85, obviously interested if you could collect, 119 on top of that, right? Collect a pick, move back 13, but you're collecting a pick that you let go in 156 in a much higher fashion. So if that
makes sense to me.
If that trade is there, that would be all that was offered, in my opinion. I don't think it would go much further than that. You could get like really aggressive and try to take a 5 next year, but I some of these formulas, I'm not going to spend time looking at charts and like breaking your guys' eardrums on 380 plus 150. Like that's not fun. But I would think if a team called with 98 and 119 for 85, I would accept that trade. So that's a route that you could go where you move up early, move back a little bit later. So I'm going to take that trade, move back to pick 95. Actually, excuse me, pick 98 and see who's there. All right, Michael Pratt's at the top of the board. He was in for a top 30 visit.
Do it.
He's in for a top 30 visit, guys. So it's not like there's no interest. I mean, I feel slimy, but he's sitting there still. I don't see a way Michael Hall is still available.
Yeah.
I don't see a way he's not a top 100 pick. Now, we could be in the situation where we're, again, public. This happened with Perion Winfrey. Do you remember, Andrew?
I do.
The day before the draft, I loved Jordan Reed. Had him on already this draft season. He had Perion Winfrey going to the Browns at the top of the second round. He went at the top of the fourth round to the Browns.
Yep.
And I don't think Michael Hall has anything like what was quite clearly derailed Perion Winfrey's career here. But every year, man, there's like, why is that guy, like, I cannot believe he's sitting there at the end of the third round. Take him. Why isn't someone taking him? It happens every year. I don't think Michael Hall is going to have the off-field issue stuff that bogged down Perion Winfrey. That's obvious, right? But I do think, and we'll see a little bit more of this when Dane drops his beast in a couple days. I think he said April 10th. He does a lot of that legwork discussions behind the scenes that people don't seem to always know about. Coaches' habits, stuff like that. So as we sit here 3 weeks out, we haven't talked to Ohio State's defensive line coach to figure out, does he not practice hard? What does he do? How is he off the field? So listen, I think that this is as simple as Pro Football Focus just has him ranked too low. That's it. But I'm not going to let their mistakes, Andrew, stop me from letting my team thrive.
I love it.
Do you think you're sitting there in the war room and we're asking each other, hey, why is DeJuan Jones still
Right.
here? We can't, this isn't a realistic draft. Let's push the restart button. No,
Mm-hmm.
folks, we take the player. Take the player. We're taking Michael Hall with, I feel like, a really great heist at pick 98.
Yeah.
We're doing
Totally.
it. So I have so far Keon Coleman at pick 41. We moved up. And then we at pick 85, moved back to 98. And we're able to collect 119. So we'll come back to me. Andrew, you are up at your second spot. And maybe there's another trade that you like as well.
There might be a similar move, but I like the player that's available here too much. This is not a player that I've seen a lot at 85 for the Browns. So for me, Blake Fisher is kind of the slam dunk pick. I can walk you through some of the other, who else is on the board. Two running backs in Irving and Benson. Obviously, we've already done wide receiver, but PFF really believes Malachi Corley is a mid-third rounder. So you got that piece of information. Christian Mahogany is a fun name and a name that has been moving up into the top 100.
Some rich mahogany.
Right, exactly. Right? Yeah, precisely. Yeah, it's going to be sort of a nice finishing piece to a roster.
Right.
So yeah, Michael Hall is here for me as well. Obviously, PFF is just too low on him, I think, but I guess we'll find out in a few weeks, right?
Right.
So yeah, I see a bunch of players that I like, but there's only one player that I'm like, yeah, this is to me a slam dunk. 21 years old, which is a big thing for the Browns, obviously, in terms of especially a player that is not going to play this year, or you're hoping is not going to play this year. So I'm going to take Blake Fisher.
I was going to take Fisher if I didn't have an offer sitting there. I like the player. He's only 21 years, just turned 21.
Right.
And you read a lot of things about him. The tools are there. They need refined. Yeah. A place where you can go in Cleveland that you're not forced onto the field and you can refine and get ready. A pseudo red shirt. There's a lot of draw to that, Andrew. Yeah. I would like Blake Fisher in Cleveland.
And in my version, because the Browns traded 156, they're just sitting around until mid-round 5. It's
pretty boring.
It's folks. A long wait.
I will say I love the spot I'm at right here. Michael Pratt's still on the board. Could take him. But boy, am I loving this tight end sitting right down here. Ben Sinnott.
Hey,
got to do it.
Yeah,
I'd be between him. There's some guys like the Browns had McKinley Jackson in, the defensive tackle from Texas A&M. If we did not take Michael Hall, would be of interest. Will Shipley, if I really wanted a back, because I know I don't have a pick now until the 200s. Isaac Guerrero is there. We've talked about him. Cedric Gray, the linebacker to North Carolina, is a fun player. There are some good options here. Mekhi Wingo, but again, we took a defensive tackle. So, listen, Theo Johnson's hyper-athletic tight end. I just really like, you and I spoke yesterday on going through all the positions. If they draft a tight end, what's that tight end going to do? What's he look like? It looks like Ben Sinnott, and I hope I'm saying Sinnott. I hope I'm saying the young man's name right. It's a great spot to pick him at 119 if they're doing some pick movement here. So feeling pretty good about that. Obviously, don't have his age quite yet, but I think he's going to be in the 21, 22 range to keep all those, ageism folks just out of our hair here about the age of the player. So we're going to take tight end right there. Feeling pretty good about it.
Your draft is an A+ so far, Jake. There's no two ways about that.
I love
Very
that.
excited about that one. Let's hope that happens.
I would that getting Keon Coleman, Michael Hall, and Sinnott there would be like, all right, I'm good. I'm just happy. Just take some swings with some guys. Otherwise, and we'll just chill for day 3. But anyway, you're up now. Pick 193.
193. So this is the pick that we got from the Patriots for 156. So we dropped back, 40 some slots. And it's honestly, Jake, it's a spot that I haven't been in a lot of mock drafts. So there's some names here that I'm not super familiar with. I do like Marcus Harris, the defensive tackle from Auburn. I don't think I like him enough to think that he could beat anybody out on the roster. So it kind of becomes a question of like, well, does that player then become a practice squad player? How does that work? I think what's interesting here is the running back situation, because I like Kamani Vidal from Troy. I like Frank Gore Jr. actually, probably I think more than I should. I'm a little. I think the name is selling me a little bit, I guess is what I mean to say.
Mhm.
So I feel like those are the two guys that I'm kind of focusing on. But I'm curious if there's any names that jump out to you, because there's some guys here that PFF has in their top 200 that I just don't know as much about because they're usually gone by the time you get to 206.
Well, you know me well enough doing these long enough that Vidal is the guy that
Yeah.
if we're able to draft him in the mid at 156 and he's sitting there,
Hmm.
I think he's well worth that selection.
Hmm.
So that's where my eyes would go.
Yeah.
Tip Raymond has some good athleticism. I mean, Cody Schrader, I mean, you're talking about pick 193 here, guy who's always overachieving
Hmm.
and would be just a fun work type, like a Danny Wood, like Woodhead type. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like
Hmm.
just always over earning what you'd expect from him. And there's a lot, there's a lot of like generalities that come with that, but that's the
Yeah.
type of the guy. I mean, he's a walk on, right? You know,
Right.
all those parallels come together. So Devonshire, some people like him, the corner. You see there, keep scrolling for me again, Andrew. Sorry, I was checking what was available on my side too. Frank Gore Jr., some people really like him, believe in him. I know Jace McClellan, because there's a tie there to
Hmm.
the situation, bringing in his offensive coordinator now on the
Yep.
Browns staff. Some folks like Johnny Dixon's athleticism upside. So really, we've talked about Bortolini a little bit.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that
I
we're
think it's
probably deep
Kamani
enough into
Vidal.
the weeds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Good.
There you go. Settled. The
And
guy
we're
that
back on the
I,
board.
the guy that I've seen, Andrew, get a lot of respect, a lot of love lately,
Hmm.
and I'm up at pick 206. I
Yep.
saw one of the guys that I respect more than anybody, Brandon Thorne, talking about this guy, Hunter Norzad,
Oh, okay.
center out of Penn State. And I know the Browns just stole a center in Luke Whippler, but you're talking about guys who you think can just move around a little bit, have a
Hmm.
backup in Whippler, a backup in Norzard. Like these guys, there's some people that really, like I saw somebody that's saying that they like him as much as they like Zach Frazier, the kid from West Virginia, who's
Wow.
a fringe top 40 guy. So, I mean, you're getting take-ish there, but like, I think at this point, when you're picking at 206, I'll take the swing and continue to see if there's just an answer that can be found there along my interior offensive line by drafting these types of guys. Right.
Hmm.
So I'll take Norzad and feel like we got a guy who we think can make the roster. So that's I think you're up. Are you up at 290? Where are you at? Oh,
206.
you're still up 206.
Yep.
Cool.
And I figured this was probably the case that PFF had a few guys that they're just way too low on. The guy that, so I can walk you through the full board, but the guy that I'm excited about here is Jared Wiley, the
Mm-hmm.
really gigantic but still very athletic tight end from TCU. The longer the draft season has gone on, the more I've warmed to the idea of them drafting a tight end. I kind of started this cycle thinking Harrison Bryant's out the door. You've still got two tight ends. They're going to be playing less 12 personnel, so they probably don't need one. But I actually really like the idea of them finding somebody in this draft, especially late, that could be a contributor. I don't think there's any chance that Jared Wiley is drafted outside the top 200, but I just wanted to talk about him because he's really fun. He's like 6'7", 6'8", and moves really well. I think he's going to be an NFL player for a long time, even if he's never like a difference-making starter. But that's my guy.
I like it, man. The similar mold to Senate and the type
Mm-hmm.
of guy that you want around. On my side, I am up. Let me see here. I am up at scrolled a little bit too far. Sorry, guys. 219. There's two people I like here. Edifon Olafosio, the linebacker out of Washington. I'm drawn to him. I like some of the tape. I think he'd be a great late swing. And then I also really like Blake Watson, the sort of smaller back, but again, tested really well. It was great in the Shrine Bowl. And I want to come out of this draft with a late preferred back that I like. I don't want to dance around the free agent game, the UDFA game. I'd rather take a guy, and I'm going to end up taking Watson here at pick 219 because that's where I think you'd have to take him. So I'm going to take Blake Watson and get a running back that I like. And then I will just wrap mine up with 243, hoping There's some, like if Tanner McLaughlin's here, I don't think he's going to be here. He's a really fun tight end out of Arizona that not enough people are talking about. Some of his metrics were up there with like, you're talking about the Florida State tight end and Senate were up there. Like this guy's right there with him. So he would be a steal late if he's available. A lot of people like Trevin Wallace. I do think that because I'm going here with Olafosio. I mentioned that a little earlier. It's a guy, he just came along really well. And I think he's got special teams written all over him for a while with the chance to develop into like an Anthony Walker type long-term backer. So I'm going to go ahead and take Olafosio here and feel pretty good about the draft, man. I feel like this is one of the ones I've actually liked more than a lot of other ones I've done. So, trading up early and trading back later. Let's go back to you before we wrap up mine.
Yeah. So Tanner McLaughlin, like you said, is available. Olafosio is available later. Dallas Gant is here. So yeah, just some guys. You mentioned Blake Watson before, Delmar Glaze, but I've already drafted Blake Fisher, so that doesn't feel like a fit. I'm going page 2 for the second time, Jake, because I really like Miles Cole from Texas Tech.
Yeah, or Gabe Hall's there too. That is another one that could be fun.
Yeah, a developmental defensive line type player. I really like Cole, and I think classic case of a player that was misused in college will be better as a pro than as a college player. So,
all right,
I'll take Cole.
There we go. 2 drafts wrapped up. Andrew's side. Let's pull it up because he traded a little bit higher than I did to move up initially. So he moves picks. Let's see here. 54, 156 in a round 3 next year. Gets back 34, 193. Goes Ladd McConkey with pick 34. So that's a great spot to get McConkey. The tackle Blake Fisher at 85. We like him. Kamani Vidal. So you're going 85 to 193. It's
a long wait.
It's a long wait. But a good draft there with that running back. And then obviously Jared Wiley, we like him at 206. And then the edge Miles Cole late athletic upside swing. PFF really hates Jared Wiley. That's for sure.
It's a joke. It's a joke how low they are in him.
Right. I move up to 41. So to move up to 41, I give up 54, 156 in a round 4 next year. So that would leave the Browns without a 4th or 5th rounder. They have multiple 6 and 7s because of, a free agent situation, comp picks, and some other moves they've made. But it would leave them without a 4th and a 5th. But you get back 41, you get back 219. So at pick 41, we took Keon Coleman, who was available in my draft. We took Michael Hall out of Ohio State, defensive tackle at 98. Because we moved back out of 85. We moved back to pick 98, and we got pick 119 for pick 85, which I feel like that's a great deal. I don't know if that deal would come together that way. I feel like it'd probably be a little lower than 119, but not sure by how much. But I love that trade because it puts us into a spot where somebody like Ben Sinnott is available. So we get Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, the tight end, Hunter Norzad, the center out of Penn State at pick 206. We used that additional pick earlier that we received from Green Bay for the 41st as a part of the package for the 41st pick for Blake Watson, the running back out of Memphis. And then we take, with our last pick, 243, Edifon Olafosio, the Washington linebacker.
So they move up and still end up with more picks than what they had. I think this is, if you're thinking about a way that they could move up and still like keep things on track, this is one way that they could really do that. So
yep.
I this feels, mine is a little bit more fanciful. I don't think there's really many worlds in which they're able to get to 34. Getting to 41 for a player like Coleman that falls into their laps, and then adding picks by sliding back a little bit. Maybe that trade with the Steelers is a little too generous, but it's the Steelers, so screw it.
Right.
I think this sort of a scenario, even if they were, instead of sliding back to 99 or 98, were to slide to into the 110s, 120s, and pick up another pick on day 3, I could see something like that, so that they end up with 5 or 6 picks still.
Right on. I like that would be the preferred route. I mean, it's all wishful thinking, because you can't make that trade for 41 thinking, we're going to trade out of 85, because you need an offer for any of them. You need something meaningful to move out of a pick. You can't just be like calling around the NFL. Hey, we're looking to move out of this. What are you giving us? Because then you don't get a deal. So anyway, we both love Keon Coleman. That should be well documented by now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you're going to move up, you're probably moving out of 85 in some form or fashion if you want to have more picks. And you also have to stomach that the next year you're going to lose a little bit of something too. But you're hoping maybe in these scenarios that we're talking about here, you're hoping you after the draft, or even hell, it could be during the draft. Say, for instance, here, Andrew, a team in the first round, maybe the Chiefs, could be a lot of different teams, think to themselves, we didn't get the corner we were hoping for. Cleveland could get a call during the draft for Greg Newsome. It's not impossible.
Definitely.
So that's a way, if you give up something like, again, moving off of a 3 or 4 next year, getting that back after the draft because a team conflicted about we need a corner, but man, we also need a tackle a little bit more, or we need a wide receiver a little bit more, and they don't take that corner, and you get into the middle of the second round and you haven't made the pick you were hoping for, a team could come knocking at that point, and I think the Browns would still be very willing to entertain that idea. If we, that's saying that at this point there's still 20 days and something happens in the league every day. Right. So they could still make a deal leading up to the draft. But I just think that there's a very realistic possibility that a team doesn't get a first or second round corner and they're offering, like I said, could be during the second round, could be before the second round. Team doesn't get a first round guy and wants something meaningful. Could happen.
Right, because that's when the pressure's on. Because if the Browns aren't trading Greg Newsome for a 2025 draft pick, I would bet almost anything. So
right,
if a team wants to get Greg Newsome, the deadline is essentially Friday night of the draft, because you're not going to probably get him for less than a third, I would hope anyway. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to obviously trade a third after Friday night when they're all selected. So that kind of gives you the end of the boundary. And we know in the NFL, a lot of times deadlines are what motivate action more than rational thought. It's just that teams don't make a decision until they have to.
Indeed. All right. Well, we did some trade up stuff. We don't think it's likely to happen, but worth definitely throwing out there in case they do, what that sort of thing would look like. If you're doing that, you're going to have to stomach that it's going to take something in the next draft. I know that the reason I'm excited about the next draft is you got not only your full slate of picks for the first time in a while, except for pick round 5, but you have a chance to have extra picks late to use as ammunition pieces to move up if you want to move up. So if you want to do something this year, though, you want to move into like late first round or second, you got to be comfortable like giving up a 2 or a 3. I mean, if you want to get in the first round, you're going to have to give up 2, and that's tough to stomach when you're trying to accumulate that.
I don't think they can. Not given the situation that they're in with the cap overall, and specifically, I hate to bring it up, but with the quarterback.
Right. Very fair. All right, guys, that's a show. We've covered a lot of different scenarios there, a lot of different players. We even put ourselves into some different pick spots, which allowed us to talk about different players. That is one thing that happens during draft season, is when you pick continuously at your spot, you're talking about the same players a lot. So doing these things, like next week's show, we might have pick a team in the division and go through it, or something. In one of these shows, we're probably leading up, maybe the one closest to the first round, we'll just do a first round mock draft. It's fun to go through and talk about other players, because again, all of these simulators put the same, for the most part, put the same grouping of players in front of us. And we're like, oh, I know that one, but I don't know that one. So we're trying to expand our knowledge. Dane's, I can't say it enough. He comes on the show every year, does such nice stuff for us here. So buy his Draft Guide, The Beast, which should come out in the next 2 or 3 days. There's no better resource for learning information on the draft and having it all in front of you. I mean, even down to the nitty gritty of like something I love is helping you pronounce some tricky last names, because that is a big part of making sure you're giving guys fair time when they're selected wherever they are. So yeah, buy that. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. If you're watching the live show, if you're listening to this on a podcast form tomorrow, thanks for taking time to do that whenever you do. And as we always say, rate and review the podcast if you can on the way out. If you are on the YouTube channel or Twitch channel, please give us a follow, a subscribe, and a thumbs up, I think is probably the way to say that, right? So that stuff helps people find us on all the social accounts. So we appreciate if you guys could do those things. Have a fantastic evening or a fantastic Tuesday from the podcast folks out there. We appreciate you much. Be well. Go Browns.